Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
This video is a Vault exclusive, hence the blank shirt. I said if I get 10,000 subscribers on the channel, I'd tell you a story about my mother. My mother passed away last year. I've mentioned that before, but I've never told this story before in video form. I don't think so. So this is a specific story about my mother, and it's important to understand a couple things. One of which is that I grew up in southeastern Michigan. I'll tell you I'm from Detroit if you're not from Michigan. If you're from Michigan, I'd say I'm from Oakland County, just north of Detroit. But all the car companies, the American car companies, have deep connections to southeastern Michigan. So Ford, GM, and Chrysler are the big three, also American Motors. And I understand that you can quibble about whether or not a car assembled by Ford in Canada and brought into America, is that an American car? I'm simply going off the nameplates. Ford, GM, and Chrysler to me are American car companies, okay, for the purposes of our discussion. I have never owned a foreign car. That is a car built by somebody other than Ford, GM, Chrysler, American Motors, or AM General. That's it. Every car I've ever owned. I've never owned a car with a foreign nameplate on it. I'm not making a value judgment. If you have, I'm simply pointing that out because it's how my family is. And it's a southeastern Michigan thing. Find somebody who grew up in my part of the state in the 60s, they'll tell you the exact same thing. When neighbors bought foreign cars, they got dirty looks. So that's just the way things were, and to some extent, the way things are. That changed in my family. My mother was the change, and I'll explain to you why. My mom owned a mid-1980s Ford Escort, and she got it with the A plan, the discount you get as a relative of a Ford employee, because her son, my brother, was an engineer at Ford Motor Company for many, many years. And he got her A plan, he got my dad A plan, he got me A plan. Many of the people in my family, brothers, in-laws, and so on, have gotten A plan. Cousins, I think, I don't know. I can't keep track of this. But A plan. So family reunion, driveways filled with Ford motor vehicles, and you understand. And that's how things are. So my mom's driving her mid-80s Escort that she bought brand new with the A plan from a dealership about 1.5 miles, 2 miles down the road from where my parents lived and where I grew up. Okay, there's a Ford dealership right down the road. She buys this Escort. She's driving it. She loves that car. She loves that car. And one day she's driving along and the engine starts making weird noises, popping, a loss of power, and issues. It's suffering from some kind of issues. So they take it to the Ford dealership she bought it from, and the guy goes, it's a bad camshaft. Now, we don't know if it's the camshaft itself that is bad, or if it went bad because of something it's interacting with. And that's not important to the story, but I want to clarify that for the car guys in the audience. But if you're not a car person, you might not know this. Camshafts should last the life of the engine. I've owned more than 20 cars in my life, none of them foreign. I've never had to replace a camshaft, ever. Never. Never had to replace a camshaft. Okay? Haven't had to do it. So they go, bad camshaft, we'll replace it. You're under warranty. Great, right? So they replace the camshaft, give it back to her. She's driving the car. She loves that car. Car runs great. She's driving the car around. And a little while later, it starts going bad again. The exact same way it went bad previously. It didn't even last as long as the original one had lasted. But now she's out of warranty. So she brings it to the dealership, goes, guys, it's doing the same thing you just fixed not so long ago. And they go, yeah, but you're out of warranty now. And she says, well, that doesn't seem fair because it implies that you didn't do the work properly, that it went bad so quickly, or there's something inherently wrong with this engine that you should have spotted the first time. And apparently she made enough noise to where somebody stepped in and said, here's the deal. You pay for the parts, we'll pay for the labor. Or there was some kind of deal struck where they gave her a discount. They did not do the repair under warranty, they gave her a discount. And before you ask the question, Steve, why didn't you step in? I was not a lawyer yet. In fact, I hadn't gone away to law school yet. This happened right before I went to law school. So she says, fine, I'll take that deal. Whatever. She literally walks home from the dealership. She's angry. On the way home, she steps off a curb and twists her ankle. She's even angrier now. She gets home, extremely upset, but they're going to fix the vehicle for her. They call her, it's done. They go pick the vehicle up, runs great, until it doesn't. And it comes back a third time. Now, she's already gotten the impression that they ain't going to fix it for her. And she goes to dealership with my dad. And they go, this time you are out of warranty. Ain't nothing we can do for you. She goes, okay. Pulls out, drives around the Honda dealership next door. Says, what can you guys do for me? They go, oh, you want to buy a Honda? She goes, yes, I do. They go, you driving that Escort? She goes, yep. They go, okay. Let's look at a comparable Honda. They show her a comparable Honda. I believe this is 1988 or a model year 1988 at least. A little white Honda. She test drives it. She likes it. She goes, oh, by the way, guys, you guys have got to take that thing in on trade and it's got a bad camshaft. You go, how do you know that? She goes, trust me, I know. So they take it on trade, actually give her a good deal on it, put her in the white Honda, and now she loves that Honda. She brings the Honda home, and she puts a bumper sticker on it. And the bumper sticker is irrelevant for our purposes, but it has to do with Finland. She puts, I think, it may have been a Sisu bumper sticker, but something else, probably a little more obscure than that, because my mother, her Finnish heritage, obviously, I tell people I'm 100% Finnish. Well, obviously, so is she. So she'd often have a Finnish language bumper sticker on her car. And I remember the day as if it was yesterday, pulling up the driveway in my car and seeing a car in my mom's parking space, and it's a Honda. It stands out like a sore thumb you can see from space. Seriously, I immediately knew something big had happened because no one in my family had ever dared buy a foreign car. And this is 87 or 88, right around there. I'm driving a Chrysler. My brother is driving a General Motors product. My other brother is driving a Chevy. My other brother is driving a Buick. Ken's driving a Ford because he works there. My dad's driving a Ford because he gets A-Plan. Here is a Honda. A Honda. My mom did not get A-Plan on that Honda. Okay? She had to negotiate a retail price. So I remember walking into the house, and I'd heard that they had trouble with the Escort, but I didn't know what had come of it. So I asked somebody, what's the story with the Honda? And by the way, my mom knew that when she made that decision, she was making a decision that was going to get this question from all 6 of her boys and everybody else in her circle of friends. Everyone was going to ask, why are you now driving a Honda, especially when you can get A-Plan from Ford? So she'd tell you the story. Failed once under warranty. Failed a second time right outside of warranty. Failed a third time. Exact same problem. And they weren't going to fix it under warranty. It's not under warranty anymore. And so this is the thing. Most people who I tell the story to, and the people that she told the story to, nobody ever says, oh, by the way, you made the wrong decision. That was crazy of you. Oh, that was inappropriate. You should have paid to have that engine repaired again and then kept driving that Ford. Maybe the third time's the charm. No one said that. Everyone hears the story and they go, oh, I'm surprised that you even paid for the parts in the second repair. Okay? But here's the point that I really think is important to understand here. I've mentioned before that there were some basic foundational issues with how the American car companies viewed their business. And American car companies, in particular in Southeast Michigan, where everyone was like I was, saying, I don't want to buy a foreign car, they know I'm going to buy an American car. So they come onto the lot at a Chevy dealer. They know it's a good chance I'm going to buy it. What am I going to do? Go buy a Honda? So the American car companies had this very lackadaisical attitude, kind of like, well, we know you're going to buy from us anyway, so who cares? We don't care. We don't care. So the dealership that told my mother, this third repair is on you. We're not helping you out this time like we did last time. They were thinking, oh, we can make some money on repairs. And the funny thing is that she traded the vehicle in running rough, and I think the Honda dealership fixed it, but they probably had to buy the parts from the Ford dealer. But the point is that they were viewing her as a constant source of business, not from car sales, but from car sales and repairs, and then car sale and repairs. And I've told people the story that I've always gotten the impression that the car dealerships in Michigan, the American car dealerships, were always thinking, we want to sell you this car. Then we want you to bring it back here for service. The foreign car dealerships that I dealt with or heard about or have had friends deal with have always acted more like, we want to sell you your next 3 cars. We want to sell you your next 5 cars. And here's the deal. My mom drove her 88 Honda for a few years, loved it, loved that car more than she loved the Escort. You know why? Didn't need to have the camshaft replaced. Nothing crazy like that. And in fact, she drove it for a while and liked it so much, she took it back to the Honda dealership and traded it in on a new one. Honda number 2. And keep in mind that that dealership is right next door to the Ford dealership. So she could be driving to the Ford dealership to buy her second car. No, she's going to the Honda dealership to buy her second Honda. She drove that car for a few years, loved that car, and guess what? She traded it in on a third car. When she passed away, there was a maroon Honda in the driveway that she had been driving till she stopped driving. My dad still has the car. And she bought 3 Hondas from that dealership. Now, if you do the math on how much money a dealership makes on one sale to one person, and if that person comes in every 6 years, you might go, Steve, seriously, is this really that big of a lesson you're pointing out to us? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Because over the long term, that's how you build up a business with a very, very good foundation that lasts for a while into the future. And I can tell you stories like that about cars that had problems that the manufacturers wouldn't take care of. And keep in mind what I do for a living. I do lemon law. I talk to people all the time about disappointing cars. And I've had more people than I could ever count say, I'm never buying a car from this company again because of how they treated me. The only question is if they're going to go to another American car company or go foreign. And I've heard the story so many times from people who say, I was an American car buyer my entire life. My whole family was, my neighbors were, until, and then they tell me their tale of woe regarding a car like my mom's Escort with a bad camshafts. And you can't blame her. You go, okay. And she knew she's going to get a bunch of grief from her kids, from her husband maybe, from her friends and relatives. She had brothers, sisters, many of whom worked in industries somehow connected to Detroit or the auto industry. And everybody thinks in those terms in southeastern Michigan. And I grew up across the street from a Ford executive, down the street from an AM General executive. I had parents, I had friends whose parents were executives at the car companies. The number of people I've known who've worked at car companies is just, I couldn't keep track of them all. And so the idea that you buy an American car is so ingrained in you. And so my mom, to make that decision and say, no, I'm going to buy a Honda. That was a big, big thing for her. And so I called my brother Ken today. I was talking to him about this. And I said, Ken, I wanted to make sure I got all these stories right, make sure that it was 3 Hondas that she bought and so on. And he goes, well, you do recall the story about Bob Lutz and the camshafts. And I'm like, wait a second. I'd forgotten that. And he reminded me, and he actually pulled the book off his shelf and read me the excerpt. And Bob Lutz wrote a book about car guys and bean counters. And he's a car guy. And he was always talking about the clash between the guys who designed the cars and the guys who wanted to keep costs down. And he tells a story about how when he was at Ford of Europe, they were doing some high-level stuff looking at problems in the company. And somebody pointed out that there's a problem with camshafts going bad. And Bob Lutz said, what, camshafts going bad? You got to be kidding me. Camshafts don't go bad unless there's something wrong. And they said, well, there is something wrong with camshafts that are wearing out too fast. And he said, how bad's the problem? They said, believe it or not, many of these camshafts don't even make it out of warranty, meaning that we got to replace them at our cost, at our expense, and it's a pain, and plus it doesn't make the customer happy, even if it's covered by warranty. And Bob Lutz said, well, what would it cost to remedy that so it stops happening? They said, oh, well, there'll be some costs involved in tooling and machining and stuff like that, but we can fix it. But it's going to be, I don't know, millions of dollars. I forgot what the number was, but it's in the book. So Bob Lutz goes, do it. Like, just that is such an obvious call for him to make that he said, just do it. Like, what do we going to take a vote? We're going to think about it? We're going to draft memos? What do you want to have, subcommittee meetings? What? Should we all go on a retreat and do a thing where you fall backwards in someone's arms, and then at the end of the retreat we'll discuss it some more? No, just do it. So they did it. And the problem is that people came to him later and complained and said, you understand how much money you cost us? And he said, well, I didn't cost you that much money because we were wasting money on all those camshaft replacements. They said, no. Parts and service is a big profit center for us. And when people come in outside of warranty for the camshaft replacement, we sell camshafts and dealerships sell the service. That's huge money. And you cost us that. And he said, you understand the problem, don't you? I hope you understand the problem. The problem is that the customer can't make a choice on that bad camshaft, but they can make a choice on their next vehicle. And ironically, my brother found that in a book that Bob Lutz wrote later. And without knowing it, Bob, who, by the way, I have met, nice guy, Bob Lutz, was talking about the fact that customers would be driven to do what my mother had done. Okay? And she looked at it. I guarantee you, she's thinking to herself, fool me once. And in her mind, the fact that she had to pay at least even part of it on the second camshaft was her being taken advantage of. And I don't blame her at all. When I heard the story, I didn't blame her at all either. And I remember in later years, years later, people would come over to our house. They'd walk up the driveway, family reunion or something, and they'd walk up, and there's always American cars, and there's one car. It's a Honda with the Finnish flag on it or something. And they'd immediately go, oh, that's got to be a relative of the Lehtos, but who would drive a Honda up here and park it behind the house? My mom would. And if you asked her, she'd tell you the story. She wasn't like on the warpath about it or anything like that. But it gets back to the problem. And that, ironically, is what Bob Lutz is getting at when it comes to car guys versus bean counters. Car guy would say, you cannot sell cars with bad camshafts. And bean counters would say, well, if you save $1 a car over 1 million cars, that's $1 million. And then if you sell the camshafts at a $3 profit and you sell 100,000 of those, that's $300,000. No, you can't sell a car with a bad camshaft. Or if you do, you lose customers. So that's my mom's story, I promised you. And like I said, I've told it to a few friends over time, but it's a great story. And I do think it is very indicative of the differences in how the car companies at least used to think. Now, I think it's changing. I know that a few years ago, the different car companies started doing things about rebates, and they'd say they'll give you a conquest rebate. That is, if they get you to switch to come to them, they'll give you some money. I first heard about those, though, in the 1990s. And so it's kind of like, yeah, you should have thought of that about 10, 15 years ago. But there were people inside the car companies going, this is not how we should be doing business. So that's how it is that a woman living in southeastern Michigan, whose husband and 6 boys all drive American cars. One of them works for an American car company, and she drives a Honda. So there you go. The story is for my mom and for the 10,000 people who subscribe to this channel. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.